You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm Stephanie Haney. So happy to have you with me here today. We're talking about something today that has really touched my life in a very particular way. Well, let me tell you a little story about a little puggle named Mr. Harry Winston. Mr. Harry Winston's been with me for a very long time. He's about 12 and a half years old, and we have spent a lot of time together over the years, but not ever as much time as we're spending together right now when I'm working from home, and I've been working from home since March 19th, 2020, like so many of you who are listening, and he's adjusted to it. In one respect, he's very happy to have me home all the time, but he's not very happy when I leave. So what we're going to be talking about today is pet separation anxiety because, as things kind of start to get back to the way things were before COVID-19 sort of wreaked havoc on all of our lives, a lot of us will be going back to the office. A lot of us will be going out more, spending less time at home, and our furry friends might not adjust to that very well. Let me give you some examples of just the things that we're dealing with here at Studio Stephanie. Harry Winston has always liked attention. He certainly has always liked attention, but now it is on another level. I will tell you this. I will take him out to go potty. We'll get done with the workday. I'll take him out to go potty, and then we'll come inside, and I'll decide I need to run down to the market for something or walk down the road and pick up some takeout, and I'll think, well, I just won't bring Winston. I'll just be gone for about 15 minutes. I'll come back home, and he'll have worked himself up into such a frenzy, he'll have had an accident in the living room. And thankfully, I've got not carpet in my living room, so that's at least something that's been easier to clean up or whatever, but that's not great. Nobody wants to see their animal upset. Nobody wants to not be able to leave the house for 15 minutes, right? So it's something that we got to work through. We got to figure this out. And we often hear it's about training the human, it's not about training the dog. So I gotta believe that there's something that we can do. We can't just be stuck with this kind of reality after having spent so much time together, because the reality is I will be going back to the office. Many of you will be going back to the office. Many of you have pets at home, and we gotta figure out how to make them readjust to what that will look like when we're not gonna be home all day long. Every single day. It's a big adjustment for all of us, right? Not just the humans, definitely the pets in our lives. So we've got an expert to talk to you about this today. My guest today is Chris Ramsay. He's a canine specialist, a dog trainer, and he's the founder of Hound Academy. And also, he's been featured in other things. He recently did a TEDx talk in partnership with Cleveland State University. Now, if you're not familiar with what TED Talks are are these sort of conference conversations that happen. And the idea is ideas worth spreading. That's their slogan. And these are short talks about important topics. Now, TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. That's how this started, these kinds of ideas. And then from there, it sort of branched out to really cover all kinds of ideas that are shaping our world. Now, the X means it's something that's been organized independently. So Cleveland State University organized this talk that Chris Ramsay did, and it was all about dog communication. And I really learned some mind-blowing things just from watching that talk. It's just 12 minutes long. So I'll be linking that in the show notes for you, by the way. I recommend giving that a listen because it was really, really mind-blowing for me. And we're going to talk to Chris about that. So let's get him in here right now. Chris, thank you for joining me today on the Three Things to Know podcast.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Chris, I have to say, I was preparing for this interview. I did a quick Google. I was looking you up. I found this TEDx talk that you did, and it absolutely blew my mind about dog communication. But before we do anything here, you have to share with everyone else what it means when a dog is howling versus growling or barking.
So howling can be a couple different things. It could be like you're walking by a yard with your dog and another dog is like, roo, 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 like tipping their head back, which is more of a broadcast vocalization. Like, hey, do you guys see me? I see you. Versus might be just like a roo, 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 like, or a bark, bark, bark might be an announcement, like I need to sound the alarm. So it really depends on when they're howling. A lot of times they'll do it. I do it with Snickers a couple times a week because he's a hound and he loves to howl. So we put it on a cue of sound the alarm and he'll tip his head back and we'll all howl together and he can sing his song of his ancestors. So I think it's, vocalization. Anytime the dogs are vocalizing, they are communicating to us. And we just have to, in a context of, so what does that mean? Sometimes they do it because they're lonely, like they're in a room or in a yard, they're just like super lonely. Does anybody hear me? But other times they do it because they're happy. So it really depends on the context.
So that lonely part is the part that caught my attention, because I have a Puggle, part pug, part beagle. So he's got that element of that howling in him. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, he's howling. This is a behavior that we're seeing when I leave. I'm like, he is trying to rally the troops. He's trying to bring me back.
He's definitely telling you that that I would like you here in that context. He's just like, hey, where you going? And don't you see me? Because I'm a cute. What was his name? Is Harry? What was his full name?
Harry Winston the Puggle.
Harry Winston the Puggle. So it's not terrible if he's going to howl a little bit, but we'd like to be able to say, you're okay, buddy. This is fine. I'm going to be back. And so getting them more comfortable with that, the less they'll vocalize. It sounds adorable when they do it. And you feel like tugging your heartstrings, like, oh, this is my guy. He's sad when I'm going. And that can feel good, but to the dog, it could be stressful and it could build up. So it's just not howling. And now it's like barking. And now it's like, okay, he destroyed my couch. Or minimum mentally, he's stressed out, and we'd like to minimize that stress whenever we can. Because if dogs are not stressed, if they're relaxed, if they're calm, the quality of life goes up and they live longer. So we're always looking to do that with the style of training that this is.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here to talk about this today. Yes, that's the thing. There is that sort of escalation. That's just one of the behaviors that I'm experiencing because, people are working from home right now. They have been working from home for a long time because of the pandemic situation we find ourselves in. There have been people who've been lucky to be able to do that. And we're now in a situation where people are getting vaccinated. Things seem to be looking like they're opening up more. And we're going to be in a situation where people are maybe transitioning back to going to the office. So we've got this separation anxiety issue to deal with here. Now, something else, just to bring it back to that TEDx talk again very quickly, something else that you mentioned in that video was when a dog scratches after going potty. And that's something that a more dominant dog versus a more submissive dog does, from what I understand. Now, does that make a difference when it comes to the separation anxiety?
Not a huge part of that. It's more of a territorial thing. It's like you would have a dog that would scratch the ground. So when they do their business, like for humans, we go use the bathroom, we flush it, go away. But for adult dogs, it's more about communication. So it's kind of like them walking along the tree lawn or in the yards, that kind of stuff, in the park. There's all these dogs. It's kind of like Facebook, right? There's all these comments that have been dropped. So sometimes, somebody left a comment. Oh, I'm gonna leave a comment. They left their leg, they squat, pee, or they poop, or that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some communication because they can figure out a whole bunch of information about the pee and the poop. So, which humans don't do that, but dogs do. It's very, very common. Scratching the ground. So if they drop their scent, like I'm gonna put a comment down, they might scratch the ground afterwards. So they have scent glands in their paws, on their pads. So that's more scent being put down on the ground. So that's kind of I discourage that, and I heavily encourage them not doing that, just because. So you can leave your comment, but it doesn't have to be in all caps, right? It doesn't have to be 16 exclamation points for every time you drop a comment, because then it just gets annoying. The dogs that are really territorial will do that without peeing first. They'll just like look at another dog and they'll start scratching the ground. Sometimes it's just the back legs. Sometimes it's all four. So that's a dog that I will typically move away from, and because they're giving me indications like, I don't like it that you're here. I don't like it you're here. And I'm not going to say, it sucks for you. I'm just going to go and get closer to you. I'm going to say, fine, I'm going to move away. So it's a different territorial leaving sense. It doesn't mean that your dog is mean or, going to, hurt anybody and that kind of stuff. There's happy-go-lucky dogs that do it too. So it's not a prime indication of a dog having serious issues.
See, I discourage it too, just because I think it's rude, because he's ripping up the grass when he does it.
Yeah, there's some big dogs in our neighborhood, and they're 60, 70, 100 pounds, and if they scratch the ground, they leave trenches in the lawn. So for my particular dogs and my clients, I really encourage, when the neighborhood has sidewalks, it's like they do their business in the tree lawn, and not on anybody's yard, not on a flower bed, that kind of stuff. I mean, Yeah, it's just, you have to be considerate. Nobody likes digging in their garden, and like, especially springtime now, everybody's like putting plants in and they're mowing their grass and stuff. Nobody likes stepping in dog poop. Nobody likes discovering it in their pachysandra beds. Nobody likes that. So it's my dogs are just like open grass where I can get it. I always carry poop bags with me wherever I go, and take it and dispose of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, lots of definitely good things we can do when it comes to being good neighbors with our puppies. But I just thought that was very interesting. Another behavior, when we're talking about dog behaviors here, another thing that I've heard is if your dog walks on a certain side or whatever, your dog thinks that it's the pack leader in your group and maybe you're the follower. And I'm just wondering, in terms of that dynamic, if you have a dog who thinks that it's the leader of your house, does that have any impact? How does that play into separation anxiety issues?
So you could have a dog that's pushy for affection, that's pushy for toys, that's pushy for food, that's pushy for you to come back. And they're really good at learning patterns. There's a reason why dogs are with humans. It's because that join, however that happened, whether it was the dogs deciding, the wolves deciding to go and approach camps, or humans like capturing puppies and raising them and keeping the most docile ones. That relationship, humans would not be where they are today without dogs, and vice versa. So I think that's, anytime you get behavior that's undesired behavior, where's that rooted from? And a lot of times it's stress. I mean, if we solve the dog problem, the human problems go away. So the human problem would be that, man, my dog's barking, he's howling, he's crazy when people come in the door, right? And it's really annoying socially, it's awkward or embarrassing. So that's the human problem. The dog problem is that he's stressed out. And it might be just an excited stress. He's so excited, he jumps on everybody and he pees. Or it might be like he nips at pant legs, or he runs away. All those are stress-based. So once we can take care of that and teach them how to calm down and relax, that everything's going to be fine, all the human problems go away because the dogs just behave different.
That is an interesting perspective to think of it at. What is our problem? What is the symptom?
Yeah, the pack leader, pack follower stuff. So I would say, like, back in the 70s, 80s, and definitely with certain TV shows that came out, it was definitely pack leader, pack follower. And there was the term, alpha dog and that kind of stuff, which if you read Dr. David Meach's stuff, which he's a brilliant canine scientist. I've been on the phone with him for a couple hours before I did the TED Talk. He said, I came up with that term. It's not appropriate for household dogs. It's just not appropriate. In my particular style of training, it's more of a player coach relationship. So the coaches, like, they draw up the plays, and here's what we're going to do today, and we're going to have lots of fun. There's certain things the coaches get to do that the players don't, and there's certain things that players do that the coaches don't. But in general, there's a teamwork that happens where we're all on the same team. We're all going to have a great time. It's all going to be fun, versus a warden and prisoner where you don't move until I tell you to move. For the style that I use now, training between the ears, developed by Stephanie and Mark McCabe, we work with a lot with free behavior, ton of free behavior. We do crate training, and we do, some loose leash walking and that kind of stuff. But I found that the more free behavior you can give a dog and reward accordingly, the more they just do their own good behaviors for their own reasons. So that's this particular style of training.
Well, I definitely like the sound of that. I want to take it back to the howling for a second.
Oh, sure.
Him letting me know particularly that he's lonely or whatever, or wants to bring mom back or whatever it is he's trying to communicate to me there. So I've just assumed that's a symptom of separation anxiety. Sounds like it could be rolled in there. But what are some other symptoms that we can look for as pet parents to see and realize that our animal is stressed? Like, for example, one thing that happens here, we've gotten to a point where if I will take him out to go potty, he does the deed, he does everything, number one and number two, I'll come back inside. Somehow, this is my poor planning, I'll need to run down the block for something. I'll need to pick up some guacamole from the market down the street, and I'll come back and he'll have had an accident in the apartment. So that seems to be another symptom that we're experiencing. What are some other symptoms we can look out for?
That's a great question, because by the time your dog is throwing a fit when you're not at home, they've already probably expressed some low-level pieces of separation anxiety. So one of the classic ones is, so if I get up and go now upstairs to get my cell phone and my dog follows me, and I go downstairs to put in a little laundry, my dog follows me, and I just go outside and I'm going to go take a shower, and the dog lays down right by the shower door. All of those, like that clingy behavior, If people were to do that to you, you would be like, dude, what's going on? Every time where are you going? Are we going someplace? Oh gosh, okay, you're coming back. Okay, we're gonna go back now. So that kind of low level stuff can eventually get exacerbated. And I will say for the owners that are watching that have a dog that's thrown a fit or having problems, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, because
Oh, thank goodness.
it would take a serious amount of effort for you to convince a dog to have separation anxiety that didn't already have that DNA piece in them. So that's part of the personality. Any good breeder will do a temperament test, and you can get a good idea for where their head's at. But I would say that I've never met an owner that says, I really want my dog to throw a fit when I leave, so I'm going to do all these things. Nobody does that on purpose. Sometimes they do it by accident, but if there wasn't that genetic component there, it would be really hard for you to bring that out. So some dogs are just optimists all the time, right? They're just like, best day ever. Who are you? You're my best friend. It's like, I just met you, buddy. And he's like, I know, but you're awesome. Dogs typically like that don't have as much separation anxiety versus ones that are a little bit more nervous, a little more shy, or that kind of stuff. So one of our jobs as trainers is to change them from being a pessimist to an optimist. So if they always look forward to things happening, and that's what we're going to get to in a minute, they change how they feel about and COVID was a big change. Dogs have a hard time with sudden transitions. It's kind of like, okay, the state says, boom, lock it down. Everybody, don't leave, right? And the dogs kind of went, wow, this is different. And then a couple of months, goes by, people start going back to work, and the dog's like, wait, you were just home all the time. Now, where are you going? So that transition, both of those transitions can be hard for dogs. Either you're home and you weren't home before, and also the owners witness more bad behavior because they're home to see when the mail carrier comes by, and then everybody is ordering like packages. I can't drive down the street without seeing Amazon, UPS, DHL, all those things. So guess what? The dogs that have separation problems usually have problems with people coming to the door. And now there's just boxes and boxes everywhere, and the dogs are like, oh my gosh, now I have to sound the alarm or I have to run or whatever. So so the low level stuff you'd want to take care of first, versus like, okay, so I'm going back to work on Monday. Let's do this thing that I learned from Chris. It would be before that. As much time as you have, the better. Dogs are really good at patterns, like we talked about before. I was talking about Snickers in the TED Talk, where he's howling off stage because we've practiced on stage with him, and he knows he's going to get to find the tennis ball in the audience. He's going to get to howl. So he starts to vocalize like, I know what's going to go on. He knows what's going on in a good way. So he's howling in an anticipatory kind of way. So the triggers that kind of happen when you get ready for work, what do you do when you get ready for work? Probably something different than if you're going to do Zoom calls all day, right? You're probably going to dress a little bit different. You're probably going to get your work bag. You're probably going to get your keys. You're going to get some other stuff that you're going to take with you to work. All those can be triggers for the dog. So if you start off in a really slow way, if you have the time, this is awesome. If you go and get your keys and you get your work bag and you pick up your coffee cup that you always take to work, and your dog looks at you and you reward them, yes, and you throw food at them. Great. Okay, so now picking up your keys doesn't mean you're leaving right away. Okay, so that's good. So I use a ton of food with training because I found that this is one of the most effective ways to help a dog become a pessimist to an optimist. So I carry a food pouch with me when I'm training all the time. And I have dogs that come here with separation anxiety, containment anxiety, where they're ripping apart door frames, they're taking off window frames, they're breaking their teeth on crates. So the food can really help you change their mind on all that. So if you start rewarding the triggers that you would typically do for getting ready to work, but then you don't go to work, okay, great. And you can build that foundation up. Pretty soon you can start adding a cue in to say like, I'll see you in a little bit, or be back later, pay your dog off with food. And we just use their kibble. We just use their dog food. Although there are times where I'll cut it with like a food roll like this. Happy Howie's is a great food roll. It's not a treat. So if you were to reward your dog, there's some dogs I'm going to reward them probably 200 times in an hour. So if those were treats, that's a whole lot of fat going in them, because the treats are really tasty and they love them, but they typically have a higher calorie count, especially if you have a dog that's 6 pounds, right? There's only so much calories you can get in that dog. So if you can start rewarding them on a slow basis for you starting to go, and the first time you leave the house, I want to say leave the room, Back in a minute, pay your dog off with food, touch the door handle. Did they eat the food? No. Okay, so they're not cool with that. The food will kind of tell you where their head's at. But if you can say, see you in a minute, pay them with the food, touch the door handle, they eat the food, great. Do that a few times. See you in a minute, pay them off, open the door. Can they take food? Great. So you slowly step them up to get used to, like, hey, see you in a minute, or be right back. It really doesn't matter what phrase you use as long as you use the same one.
Okay.
But if you pay them off and then start to slowly step them up, so by the time you say, see you in a minute, you open the door, close the door, 5 seconds, open the door, come back, greet your dog in a calm way. Not like, oh my God, you did. The dog in a calm way, and then slowly work up to, so the thing is, you can't go too slow. You can definitely go too fast. If your dog goes through these steps and is like boop, 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 great. But at any given time, if they stop taking food, that tells us that they're not comfortable. If they're not relaxed enough to take food, they're not relaxed enough to make a good decision. So that's the best barometer you're going to find to figure out where is the dog's head's at, in combination with, like, what's the tail doing, what the ears doing, are they vocalizing, all that kind of stuff. So by the time you be able to leave the room for 30 seconds, come back, and your dog can eat the food, great. So can you say, get all your stuff, keys, coffee cup, bag, see you in a minute, or be back later, pay them off, go get in your car, start your car, turn it off, come back in 30 seconds later. What happens? Great. Do they take the food? Great. So that will give you the start of doing that in your first trip, like to actually get in your car. It's like, just drive around the block, come back. So it's a really, really short trip. Build them up slowly. And I think that's, if you take, it sounds like there's probably some owners who are watching this going, there's no way I have time for this. There's no way. I can't do all this. If you could do as much as you can to help your dog, and that's what you're doing. Your dog's having a hard time. It's not giving you a hard time. The separation anxiety is real for them.
Right. Now
for you, it's just like, dude, I go away and I come back every single day. It's like, get over it. Well, we need to help them with that. There's lots of dogs that need help with that.
We are their whole worlds.
Right. So if they're going to depend on you as a coach, and you're calling the plays, like, they have to trust that these plays are good. This is things are going to be fine. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to get, or whatever. So I think it's our job as owners, as coaches for the dogs, is to help them at any given step. So I had a session yesterday where the dog was scared of stairs, and she's the same age as my Wally, who's an awesome assistant. He'll do anything I ask him to. He's 11 months old. Their dog has a problem with stairs. So we spent the first hour just working with the dog. We got her to go up 6 stairs.
Oh,
so
good.
out of about 14 stairs for her, that was amazing. And they were like, well, how come she can't go up the stairs? How come she just doesn't get it? If we realize, we have empathy for the dog and say, this is her problem. When you guys leave the house, does she have a problem? Like, no, she's great when we leave the house. Well, that's not her problem. Her problem is this. Separation anxiety for dogs, that's their problem. And we need to help them with it. If you take care of all of their needs first, they've been outside, to do potty, they've been fed water, they've had some interaction, some playtime, that kind of stuff, you're more likely to get a good reaction versus wake the dog up, have it potty, feed it, and then leave for 8 hours. That would be a recipe for some undesired behavior.
Yeah, that's pretty abrupt. You said a lot of things in there that I just want to circle back to. First of all, the shower thing. Yes, that's a clear sign of separation anxiety. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense to me. That happens here for sure. Turn on the shower, he finds himself right on the bath mat. But one that I did not necessarily consider would be a sign of separation anxiety is the door thing, because that is definitely a thing. I live in an apartment situation and there's a buzzer system to get people in. And when that buzzer goes off, he hears that and he just starts freaking out, getting very, very vocal. And that's interesting. That's not something that I would have realized necessarily that was a symptom of separation anxiety. So all great tips there, things to watch out for. Wonderful if you can get to it before it's escalated. I, unfortunately, am definitely in a situation where it has escalated. It has.
So the buzzer is a great thing about, so if there's in and out of the house and there's stress or there's a whole bunch of excitement every time somebody comes and leaves the house. So if you leave your house, you're like, I'll be back later. You're going to be great. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to go to work. And then you crank them up and then you leave. Like, what are they going to do with that excitement? A lot of times it goes the anxiety way. So when you come home, and you leave, if it's more of a calm way. So when I come home from sessions, so I'm taking Wally, who's my young guy, my 2 older ones are retired, they're 13 and 15. I come back home, a lot of times they don't even get up and greet me. Sometimes they do, but if they do, it's like stretch, they stretch, they come and like wag. How you guys doing? Good. Do you have any parties while it's gone? You know, do you guys take a nap? What's going on? But I'm not coming home going, where's my puppies? I'm not coming home and just, really getting them cranked up.
That's hard though, because you're excited to see them too. But the idea of coming home to a very casual and relaxed Harry Winston, who's just like, oh, hey mom, sounds great. It really does.
It is awesome. And I think some people misinterpret that over the top exuberance is like, okay, so that's just total affection. They can do the same thing. They can feel the same way with a little bit less excitement. They can still be excited when you come home. And I'm not saying ignore your dog. I'm saying that there's levels. I mean, I have dogs that will jump on their owners and they get so excited they pee. So they get tired of changing their clothes every time they come home. And guess what? Visitors don't like coming over because this guy, I'm not going to name him, but he's a tall Bernedoodle, and he will put his paws on your shoulders and then he'll pee. So he's so excited.
I love that you're keeping the Bernedoodle anonymous for his own protection. Thank you.
It is. Their initial solution to that was when they have guests, they have the guests pull the car in the driveway and they let the dog out and he runs around the car peeing on the driveway, right? And then he runs out of pee and then they have the owners get out and he still jumps up, but at least the owner, the guests don't get peed on. So we worked in a way where we want him more relaxed when people get there. So the same thing, it's very Pavlovian. So your door buzzer, if you could record that on your phone, it'd be awesome because you can control the volume. But if you played that buzzer and you threw food at your dog and you did that for a week, it wouldn't be more than a week, maybe 2, where the buzzer happens on your door and you throw food and the dog's going to think totally differently about that because the reactive side of the brain and the reward side of the brain are different and they're incompatible. First, physically, it's really hard for a dog to bark and vocalize when they're eating. And then 2, just that, okay, so if you reward, eventually they don't go to the reactive side, they go to the reward side. They shortcut that. It's very Pavlovian and you can use their entire meals. I have several clients that haven't fed their dog by a bowl for 3-4 months just because they have a really extreme case. So the more you can use that food to change their mind about something, the better. So if the buzzer goes off and they get paid and they hear the person outside your door and they get paid, and then the door opens, they get paid, they see the person, they get paid. So there might be 4 or 5 rewards every single time somebody comes to the house. They're going to think totally differently about what they're going to do when that person gets in there. And the same thing when you leave. So if you leave and you pay the dog off, which is great, that's the first start of it. And then there's games that you can do. So there's things called snuffle mats where you'd have this, it's on the ground and you can throw kibble in there and they have to dig around and get that. That's pretty handy. I love, this is one of my favorite toys. This is the Kong Gyro. So it's like this little disc or little donut thing with a ball inside. You unscrew it, you put food in there and put it down the ground, and they have to bat it around to get the food out. So if they get their whole breakfast this way, if they get their lunch this way, or there's Kongs are typically everybody's seen these.
Yes.
It's like you could put peanut butter in there and you can freeze it and that's great. But and there's almost toys like this, you can put little treats in there and that kind of thing. But what I like to do is drop some kibble in there and put it on the ground, let them bat around and get it. When they get good at that, I'll make it harder. So I'll take an old stuffy toy like this one. Kibble goes in, he gets stuffed in there, and now the dog has to pull this out with his paws and teeth and then get the treats inside. So it's not just about licking, which is fine. They sell lick-o-mats where you just smear peanut butter or food on there and the dogs just lick it. But if they have to use their brain to get this, that is super productive for the dogs. Kong also makes a bigger one like this. So it's this big thing that, you put food in there and you screw this on. Now they have to bat it around. So it's weighted on the bottom so it wobbles around. Okay. So all good for the brain. And then there's toys that you can buy like this, where you put food in these little cupboards and little drawers. There's other ones where they have to spin it around. So you have to spin these little pieces around and get the food. And in the beginning, if I'm going to introduce a dog to that, what do? We make it easier for them. So I pull the toy out, put it on the ground, and just throw food on top randomly. Just get them used to like the toy. versus, and all of these have different difficulty levels. So I don't want to say like, hey, this one's really difficult. You've never done this before, so let's do this. And then all the food gets hidden where they have to like pull a drawer and then flip the lid open. They might just get frustrated and pick the toy up and shake it.
Right.
So,
and also, just want to let people know that are listening to this podcast as well. This is on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the show notes because you're going to want to see all of those toys that Chris just showed to us. So for the people who are listening to this and not watching, make sure you hit up the YouTube channel, and I'll put the timestamp there so that you can see exactly where to see these toys, because these are great examples. Absolutely. Which brings me to the next question. So these are the kind of things maybe that we want to leave for the animal to be occupied with while we are gone. Is that something that we should be doing?
Yeah, I think that anytime that you can give them some mental stimulation, and for training between the ears, we definitely focus on a balance of physical stimulation and mental stimulation. So this is not a training style where you say like, you know what, I'm just going to walk my dog for 3 miles and then get them super tired and they're just going to crash. Yeah, sleeping dogs don't misbehave, absolutely. But if we don't take the care of the mental component of that, and give them some challenges during the day, a lot of dogs just go crazy. They just like, I don't have anything to do but run on my treadmill, or they're going to walk me later. So anytime we can add either the mental stimulation for games, and then relaxation is a huge part of it. So there's lots of different techniques of condition relaxation. It's a way to kind of, usually there's a physical manipulation of the dog to kind of rock them and massage them, to get them how to relax, teach them how to relax. And then a behavioral down, which is a really, really simple thing. And if you go to trainingbetweentheears.com, there's a free little workshop that you can download for behavioral down. It teaches the dog how to relax on their own. And if you can get those in on a regular basis, all the dogs so nobody ever calls me and says, you know, my dog's just so calm, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. It's like they have this problem with this thing, and it's usually driven by excitement or lack of boundaries, or them being a pessimist. So working on the dogs how to relax. And I would say some of my easiest clients are psychologists and yoga instructors, because they really have a fine tune of either how the brain works for humans and can understand the canine part of it. And then people who are into exercise, relaxation, sometimes meditation, they realize what the full benefits are for people when they just relax. And it could be just like take 5 minutes and just chilling out in your day and just clearing your head. I mean, that's good for people. So if you can teach your dog how to do that, and there's easy ways to do that, they're happier campers. They do great. They do great.
Well, I am definitely putting a link to that. We're going to find that link, and we're going to put a link to that in the show notes. That's also going to be linked on WKYC.com, because that sounds wonderful, at least for my personal position. And I know that if I'm experiencing it here, I know that you all are experiencing it too. I want to ask you just a couple specific questions, Chris, before we let you go here. Some of the things that we've seen like around the internet, putting your sweatshirt in the crate with the dog. What do you think about that? Is that helpful?
I would say, so there's like Thundershirt and that kind of thing. And I will say, I don't see a huge benefit to that as far as being effective. It could work for a small subset of dogs. It's like, okay. I mean, but if you have a dog for a while, they already know what you smell like. And you're not going to really fool them to say, hey, my sweatshirt's here, so that means I'm here. A lot of times we'll practice with dogs. I'll leave the TV on to make it easier for them. So I might put on a news channel. I don't put on Animal Planet or any show where people are yelling and screaming. So it could be a news channel that's, you know, just talking, that they can hear that, not to blast out all the neighborhood sounds. It's just to be able to a level where the volume level should be, if you and I were talking in a room and I had the TV on at the appropriate volume, we could have a conversation. But if we stopped, we could hear the TV a little bit. And that's about the volume you'd want to do. So it just kind of gives them a sound. You could, and there's doggy YouTube channels, and there's Spotify playlists of music for dogs. It seems to do decent. I think the talking is better. It's just my particular experience.
What about the Thundershirt? Is that something that's helpful? The Thundershirt, for people that aren't familiar, this is the thing that sort of, it's just a little snuggie kind of for your dog. It just wraps them up. Yeah,
it's kind of like a tight fitting shirt. And so I have a noise aversion workshop. So noise aversion and separation anxiety are two workshops that are pretty involved. So the stuff that I'm telling you now, this would typically be like a 20-hour course. We're just going to kind of boil that down. So I have seen some dogs react to having a shirt on. I've seen dogs react in a negative way. I have a client that if you would put a shirt on him, or if he's laying on the couch and you put a blanket on him, he'll freeze. He will not move. You can call his name, you can give him food, he won't take food, he won't move. That sensation, that physical sensation of the blanket on him, he's not comfortable with. So I like things that work with the majority of dogs. So if I get something that works 80-90% of the time, then I'm looking at it. If I get something that works 20% of the time, it could be something that I might try, but it's not something that's in my regular toolbox that I'm pulling out. And Thundershirts, thunder, gunshots, all that kind of stuff is such a hard thing for a lot of dogs to process. And a lot of times it doesn't matter what, you could put a thunder parka on them, right? And it's not going to make a difference. There's ways to help them finally get up to that point, but just throwing a shirt on them, if it works for you, great. You're not going to harm the dog by it. You could definitely try it, but I prefer other techniques that would help the dog eventually become very, very comfortable with that without the shirt.
I just had sort of a light bulb moment that it's called a Thundershirt, so that makes sense. It's for sound aversion, of course. Like
right.
Thunder, fireworks, all of that good stuff. Okay, good to know. One more thing to ask you about here. CBD treats seem to be very popular. People trying to calm their dogs with that. How do you feel about those?
So I myself am experimenting with that with my older dog, because she's to the point now where we call her crazy, but it's more like a dementia. So she might stare at the walls or the ceiling, for 10 minutes, or she might get confused physically, like her back legs aren't working right. And so she's having a hard time processing some stuff. So I am doing some CBD stuff in with her dinner at night, because she tends to get sundowner syndrome and be a little wacky at night. I have a couple clients who've done it and says it works. I personally do not have a lot of experience with that, but I know there's trainers that do. And I think that's one of the upcoming things, and that's why I want to play with it now with my own dogs, is because I think that has a real potential to have an impact on dogs, whether they're just separation anxiety or sundowners or a whole bunch of stuff. I think it has the potential to be very, very powerful.
Okay. Well, Chris, you've given us a lot to think about. You've given us symptoms to look for, things that we can do while we're waiting to transition to going back to the office, things that we can do while we're at the office to try and help our dogs be more calm and comfortable. I know you have so much more to share. Where else can people connect with you?
So I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. I'm on Instagram too. You can look up Shake Your Hound Academy on both. On the Instagram, I'm showing dogs and some quick one-hit pictures and that kind of stuff. On the Facebook page, I'll get into more detailed success stories, and I just posted a couple today that were really, really nice. We also do sometimes I'll put up stuff about the pack walk. There's another trainer myself who run a pack walk on Saturdays. We just started doing that since COVID started. We've been on a break for like a year. So the first pack walk we had, people were just itching to get out. We had like 98 people, and then last Saturday was 128. So
wow.
And so people are really looking to reconnect with the community and with their dogs. And and I always get pictures and stuff afterwards, like if the dog's doing some great practice, and it's challenging because they don't get to meet each other. So part of the mental challenge, there's the walk part, which is probably about a mile, which is not a lot. It takes us an hour to go 1 mile, because we'll walk a little bit and then we'll do a little exercise with the dogs. They have to pass by each other or figure eights or something like that. So mentally, that's my favorite part of the pack walk. And that's how I train in general, not just for pack walks, but is adding that mental component to give the dogs a mental challenge. And they all just, they sleep afterwards, they're super happy. The rest of the day goes smooth. It's all great.
Well, this has been super helpful, Chris. That sounds awesome. Definitely going to check out that pack walk. Going to try these things out with Harry Winston the Puggle. I'll keep everyone posted. You can follow my Twitter and Instagram for the ongoing separation anxiety saga of Harry Winston the Puggle. Chris, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I have hope, you guys. I do. After talking to Chris, I do really think this is something that I could train myself to better train Winston, and hopefully all of you can train yourselves to better train your animals if they're experiencing any of this separation anxiety. He gave us some great tips for things we can do while we're still at home in the adjustment period when we do go back to work. and how to keep our animals, entertained and mentally stimulated, and hopefully keep them living longer and happier, and all of those things that are so important. So, big thank you to Chris on that. However, we can't always be home. We can't always be leaving our dogs unattended. So that brings me to what you need to know in NEO. And this app is a true lifesaver. It's an absolute godsend. It's called the Rover app. And if you're not familiar with it, I want to just break it down for you. This is an app that offers dog walking, dog sitting, check-ins. You can find people to watch your dog in your home. You can take your dog to their home. You can organize walks, whatever it is that you might need. And it's basically like Uber for taking care of your dog. It's so incredibly helpful and so crucial because, there are great boarding facilities all over Northeast Ohio for sure, but that's not always going to fit your needs. Sometimes the drop-off times aren't flexible. They're a little bit more pricey. I will say the Rover app is pretty economical, and if you find someone that you like and can get with them consistently, then your dog is getting that one-on-one care that it might need. Now, I first became aware of Rover when I was living in New York City and needed dog walkers. It was pretty easy to get a dog walker pretty much on demand within an hour in New York City. With Rover, I will tell you, here in the Northeast Ohio area, you do need to sort of plan ahead just a little bit more, but I have noticed since I've been here over the last year and a half, there are more and more people who are using the app to provide care for dogs, and there are reviews, and people will set up meet and greets with you ahead of time so you can make sure that your dog will be well cared for and you're comfortable with the person. So I can't recommend Rover enough. It has been phenomenal for us. It's been great, for people to dog sit Winston. I've had people come into my home and take him on walks and pick him up, drop him off. It's just really, really helpful. So if you've got a dog and sometimes you need some extra help taking care of that dog, Rover is the app that you need to know about in NEO. And in the spirit of calm and relaxation, this week's A Good Follow is a golden retriever account that you will absolutely love. It's Moose the Golden Retriever on Instagram. That's the Instagram handle, Moose the Golden Retriever. This is a therapy dog living here in Ohio. Moose will be 5 years old on July 26th, so got a birthday coming up here really soon, and Moose is adorable. Moose dresses up for all of the holidays. Big into the theme, Mr. Moose the Golden Retriever is, and his owners created these Moose cards. They're absolutely adorable. You can see them on the Instagram feed for every special occasion. If you are in Moose the Golden Retriever's life, you're getting a Moose the Golden Retriever card. They're so cute. You have to check them out on Instagram. And this feed is just very calm and peaceful. And it's a popular Instagram feed already. It's got over 60,000 followers. Give it a follow. I do not think you will be disappointed. It's just another nice, joyful thing to add while you're scrolling. Again, that's Moose the Golden Retriever on Instagram. Okay, that's it for 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney this week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you learned something about pet separation anxiety. I certainly did. And I'm really excited to put these things into practice because I would just really love to be able, when things open up back again, to, go out for a couple hours and come home and know that my dog is not upset or freaking out, or I'm going to come home to a mess, or any of those things that nobody wants. So if you enjoyed the show today, I hope that you'll leave a rating, leave a review, share it with your friends, and drop me a DM. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you would like to hear about next. I will tell you, next we will be covering re-entry anxiety for the humans, because there is definitely some of that going on when we're going to be, like I said, going back to the office and getting social invitations for the first time in a while. Things that we're not necessarily used to. So we'll be covering that next week. Between now and then, stay safe and be well, everyone, and I'll see you back here next week. I'm Stephanie Haney.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.